Hey, do you want to hear about the entity that lived next door? It's a short one, but I promise you this one's really weird.
Arriving at Retrospect. Retrospect Station. Doors will open on the left.
Welcome back, all you lovely passengers, to Retrospect Station, the show where I show you just how colorful life can be. And oh boy, am I going to show you just how colorful life can be, no matter what age you are. Last week, we addressed the fact that Carney called a snap election because the law demands he does. And there ain't much of a lesson other than if you overwork yourself, you'll hallucinate your workplace in your bedroom. That one was more of like an informative kind of episode. I just really wanted people to know about voting. By the way, if you haven't voted yet, for the love of God, go vote, please. But I don't have a lot of time for this one. I wasn't really very organized. That's just a me thing. Anyone who knows me knows that's just a me thing. I don't organize well. So this one's going to be short. And this one kind of came up because my mom brought up this story one night in the kitchen. And it's not like I forgot about it. I just didn't remember it was a story I could tell. But now I want to tell it. So this week, as I said, there was an entity that lived next door. There's no lore. There's no backstory. It's just this story. When I was little, I didn't live in a house. I lived in a condo. I lived in a condo up until I was like 24-ish or something. And then we moved into a house. And if you're in a townhouse, you still have neighbors and you can kind of hear them. And sometimes I hear them come up and down the stairs because our stairs and their stairs share a wall. So you kind of hear your neighbors, but it's not the same as when you live in a condo. Anybody who's ever lived in an apartment building, condo, whatever, you know that the walls are a little closer to paper thin than before. And where we lived in the suite, right next door, and I mean right next door to the bedroom I slept in, we will call him the Viking. Now, I want to preface this by saying, I know that Viking is just like a whole stereotype, mythological thing made up to describe Scandinavians, and that's not how they didn't have the horn hats. They didn't like go hingadingadurgan and stuff like it's all it's tall tales. But when you're 6 or when you're 4, that doesn't really matter to you. So, and to be fair, when you're living in 2002, no one's really thinking in that way yet. Now people do, but back then you're not really thinking in that way. You just kind of use the old lore stories and caricatures that you're familiar with to kind of spook your children into safety. That's how most mythological stories come about, is you're trying to spook the children into safety. Well, damn, my mother was trying to spook me into safety. So the entity that lived next door, she called it the Viking, and thus I called it the Viking. And it was likely because at the time I thought that Vikings were scary. They had the axe and the battle axe, and they were covered in blood. And there was that caricature and that imagery that I had. Maybe from movies, maybe from TV, maybe from picture books and stuff. I was an avid reader. I combed through all of my mother's magazines. I tore, literally, the pages, through my mother's magazines. So I was fairly aware of certain things that typically kids aren't. I'm not talking about like distressing things, but things that kids typically don't latch on to. So in this case, my mom knew that the imagery of a Viking would scare me. Why did she want to scare me? Well, let me tell you about the Viking. And the only reason I'm telling you about this is because it came up. When I was young, I lived right next to the Cooksville GO station. There is a set of apartment buildings there. We lived in one of them, and the sound of the train constantly passing by terrified me as a child. And there were many things in that apartment that scared me up until the age of like 5. And I'll get into them one by one. That'll be like a whole that apartment set of stories. Today's the Viking. And it's about our neighbor who had the most abhorrent hacking cough you have ever heard. And it's because he smoked like a fireplace. This man was smoking like a house burning down because of Thanksgiving dinner gone wrong, okay? And I say that most sincerely. I have very severe asthma. Like, in recent years, in my adult life, it's way better than I was as a child. But as a child, I was basically clinging to my inhaler and the chamber that goes with it for breathing. I went to the hospital once because I couldn't breathe right. So this is important because if the guy's smoking like Popeye the Sailor with his little tobacco pipe every 5 minutes, I'm not doing too well. And that was the room I slept in for quite some time. That was the room that the kids, me, my brother, and then my mom, we all kind of slept in that room. Because my co-sleeping. And I'm glad. Good belief. Co-sleeping with your really young kids. Like, as long as they're not infants and you're going to roll over and crush them, co-sleeping with your kids is not that bad idea. Separate them with pillows and all that stuff. But pretty quickly, my mom caught on that there was cigarette smoke in this room and that it was affecting me. Once we knew I had asthma, I was about 4 years old when we knew I had asthma. We switched, like my parents took that room as their room, and then my mom in the night would sleep with next to me and my brother when we were really young in the other room. So there was a switcheroo that happened at one point. And it's because for some reason, even though there was walls and there was vents and everything, and we were supposed to be on our own air systems and all that, as soon as he would flick up a cigarette, that's it. We all knew, the whole place, we could smell it. And once he started, I'm going to try my best to imitate it, he would sound like this. That was how he sounded. And it would be like every 5 minutes, you'd hear him. And I didn't know at the time it was coughing. I was 4. I thought it was maniacal laughter, which scared me even more. So me at 3, 4 years old, growing up with right next to my ears, was like the Viking. My mom's like, oh, that's is it scaring you? Oh, that's the Viking. He lives next door. And it was because she had seen him once. And maybe he was a lovely fellow, or maybe he wasn't. But parents usually have a good sense of danger and not danger. And she did not get the vibe from him. The vibe she got from him, that ain't it. No. She got the sort of creepy vibe from him. Like, he wasn't it would not be wise for her children to be accessible by him. That was how she felt. And likely she was possibly right. So because my parents had weird times when they worked, and we were never alone, but a parent could be asleep. Because my parents, one would take the night shift, one would take the day shift, basically at being at home. Basically, my mom didn't want us to ever interact with him and open the door and accidentally be whisked away because we trusted, oh, it's an adult at the door, whatever. So she kind of scared me and my brother, but I think I took to it more. To try and convince me that the Viking next door, he's this big, ooga booga, scary boogeyman who lives next door called the Viking. But she never described him. Now, here's the thing. She knew what he looked like. She'd seen him. I have no recollection of him. I may have very well seen him, and I don't know that's the Viking. Because from the moment she spoke his name into existence, the Viking, I put that name plus together. And what came out from that was, I want to describe him to you now. I conjured up this image of Mhm. A really squat and short man, like as short as me at 4 or 5 years old. Like, I was a tallish kid, but like I'm literally talking about a man who's like 3 feet tall, but as wide as a room. Like, not as wide as a room, as wide as a queen bed. I conjured up the image of this man who was like really squat, as wide as a twin bed or a queen bed, with rolls and rolls of pudge, not from fat, but because at that point, at that age, I had associated smoking with drinking and drinking with pot belly. So all of this imagery came together. He had like these really squinched in eyes because he had these huge, puffy, like red, swollen kind of cheeks and forehead, brows and everything. So his face was all smushed up like this. For people who are listening and they can't see, I have squeezed my cheeks and my eyebrows together. But he looked like that. He was all smushed up like that. And his cheeks and his chin all matched that. They were all smushed up and like really pronounced rounded features everywhere. Like round orbs made this man up. For some reason, he was dressed, shit you not, like a chimney sweep. And I think at the time, it's because I had watched Mary Poppins. And I think because they were hacking in the movies, I had made an association that I didn't realize I'd made. And so in my head, he was dressed like a chimney sweep, but with a little bit of like a collared shirt peeking through his dusty black button up. And he had like, not a top hat, but what's it called? A bowler hat, like the shortened version of a top hat, the bowler hat. He had that. But it was black. His theme was black and white, but his skin was that bronze, reddish mottled, like drunkard kind of complexion. I don't know why I gave him the complexion of a drunkard when he smoked. He probably drank, but I didn't know that. I can possibly link it back to a moment where I'd watched the Pinocchio movie by Disney or Pixar, whichever, multiple times. And actually Disney Pixar at that point, I think. But I'd watched it multiple times, and again, I know today these are all racist caricatures, but a child doesn't really know that when they're 4 and they're just kind of inheriting the cartoon motifs they see around them. That was me. But Stromboli, the puppeteer guy who steals away Pinocchio and has all these other people or kids, I don't remember who Stromboli had with him, to make up his circus or his group of like, whatever it was. I think it was a circus. And he was kind of like a shorter Stromboli, honest to God. And it was because I had associated Stromboli with being a villain. In the story, Stromboli is meant to be a villain. And considering that the Viking was a villain, that 2 and 2 make 4. So when I say the entity, it's because he didn't feel real. Like, he was tangible. I could hear him. I could smell him. But he didn't feel real in that I'd never seen him. Now, again, keep in mind, I've probably actually seen the man who was hacking and coughing and dying of emphysema, but I didn't know that was him. And my mom described him to me one day in the past. I don't even remember what the description was. And he was way taller than I imagined him, obviously. He was about as fat as I imagined him. Well, no, he wasn't. But he was definitely like a large, pot-bellied man. But he was definitely not the complexion I imagined him. And he had way more hair than I gave him. Like in my, excuse me, I have the hiccups. I should probably clarify. In my visions, he also had this like dapper, what's the word I'm looking for? Whiskery, boar's bristle kind of mustache. It was really wide across his entire face. And like a little goatee thing. Again, Stromboli. I gave him Stromboli's facial ishness because that was the most pertinent villain that I had experienced at that age, the ripe old age of 5. Attention all passengers, we interrupt this story to bring you a special announcement. That's right, literacy is atrocious these days, for reasons outside of our control, of course. And so, what better way to help that than with a word of the week? Every week, I'm going to be bringing you a new and colorful vocabulary word, spelling, definition, sentence, so that we can all together work towards a more colorful vocabulary. And that way, people won't start saying, oh, well, because you use one of these kinds of words, you wrote it with AI. That's not true. I'm a poet. I'm a writer. We use colorful words all the time. Let's normalize that. So this week, the word of the week is perfidious. Perfidious. And perfidious is spelled P-E-R-F-I-D-I-O-U-S. Perfidious. And Merriam-Webster defines perfidious as, one moment, of, relating to, or characterized by the quality of being faithless or disloyal. That's right, perfidious means being faithless, disloyal, acting with treachery. And an example sentence of perfidious would be something like Alberta Premier Daniel Smith asking the Trump administration to pause the tariffs until after the election in favor of Pierre demonstrates her perfidious nature. Perfidious. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. So I had conjured up this character. Now, that's a fun little story to tell, like, oh, I was a kid, I came up with this guy. The funnier part is that I moved out of that room entirely into a brand new home somewhere around the age of 24. And I'd gone away for about 5 years to Ottawa to study. In that time period between like 17 to 24, I'd been away for 5 years. But to this day, I don't know what he looks like. And if you truly just, like my mom said to me in the kitchen, like a month ago-ish, just 2 words, the Viking. And instantly that image pops into my head. I have no other association. So to me, he's still an entity and he's still at large. I mean, the guy's probably dead now, given how many years have passed and given what his lungs sounded like. But no, to me, he's this foreign entity, this cryptid that lived right behind my bedroom wall. Oh, and I guess I didn't even clarify this part. After a while, when I grew a little older and rooms need to be separated, my brother got the same room that we had all been sleeping in, and I got back that room. And there was other space in the house for my parents, so they took the other space. But they gave me my own room, and that we converted that second biggish room. There were other biggish rooms. We converted the original room that that all of us had been sleeping in, into my bedroom, knowing full well that the smoking was still happening, but he did it less. So I guess a doctor informed him, you need to stop, you're dying. And or he just didn't live there anymore. Like maybe he went elsewhere and he lived with somebody else. But his presence was less known. And so I was allowed to sleep in that room with minimal to moderate issues, asthma speaking. But I did hear him on occasion, especially in the earlier years of me sleeping in that room. I would hear. I can still hear it in the back of my mind, clear as day, like playing, me in that room, hearing that exact noise, muffled through a reasonably thin wall. And even when I was like 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, about to move out, when I heard it, that was the image that came to mind. I didn't even, my brain never bothered trying to conjure a real man. It conjured this like fae type, ethereal, hellish cryptid that resembled a man but wasn't quite one. And he was the Viking. Note that in all of this, calling him the Viking, not once did I give him the hat with horns. I think I did at one point. I think at one point when I was small, I did. And then it didn't feel right. I was like, there's no way he wears that. So I gave him a bowler hat at some point in this whole process. I don't really know when that happened. But yeah, like, listen, I said this was going to be a short episode. It wasn't going to be like an important episode. There will be some burner episodes where I just rant for fun and they're short, or they could be long. Who knows? But this is one of them where, like, I'm sorry. This is the story of the entity next door, colloquially known as the Viking, who I still remember to this day. So, but yeah, that's really all I wanted to say about him. The Viking who lived next door. At one point, I do remember my mom said, like, not recently, when we still lived there and I was still in that room, I have this memory of her saying something about the Viking's family. Like, oh, his kids are around. And I was like, what do you mean? And I think I was 11 when she said this. So my mom didn't know until this year, the year of our Lord, 2025, what the Viking looked like to me in my head. She thought I had conjured up a normal human man. No. But back then, I know now why she said it to me so nonchalantly. Oh, his kids are over. I think I saw them, whatever, like go in. They're young people. You know, they're like your cousin's age. Because I have I'm Caribbean brown person. I have a gazillion cousins, and like 60% of them are far, far older than me. So at the time, she was like, yeah, they're your cousin's age. You know, they're so-and-so's age and so-and-so's age. Yeah, his kids. And I was like, the Viking has kids? This is illegal. How can this thing have kids? Like, he was a thing in my head. I don't mean that meanly, like he couldn't have been a person. It was because when I was first introduced to him, I was 4. And I was familiar with fairy tales and monsters and mythological things and spirits and entities and whatever. And ooga booga. Like, so when I came up with him, he wasn't a person to begin with. He was like a villain creature. And then as an 11-year-old, my mom said this to me. It was like this jarring realization that, I mean, yeah, he has to be a real person, but it's like that. It's kind of like that moment where I had to wake myself up and tell myself that the returning office wasn't in my bedroom in the last episode in that story that I told you. It was kind of like that, where like logically it made sense, but my brain didn't want to accept it. Like there was a part of my brain that was like deeply rooted in this caricature of the Viking. Maybe I'll draw him one day and like put him up on Instagram or something. I don't know. Maybe that's a thing I'll do. I'll finally draw him. I'll make him real. But yeah, like, he had, that was his most defining feature, I forgot to tell you, was not the pudginess, was not the bowler hat, was not the weird outfit, or the fact that he was 3 feet tall. It was the obscenely, unseemly largest cigar, that he had, just all this, like, hanging out the side of his mouth through his teeth, like cartoon characters do. And it was because my mom said to me, that's what he's like. He's got a big, fat cigar, huge, big, fat cigar, and there's all this smoke all around him. Because she was like really trying to, 1, doll up that this man was dangerous and unpleasant, and please don't interact with him. And 2, I think she just severely wanted to discourage me from at all thinking smoking was okay. My parents don't smoke. I wasn't around people who smoke, like in my family. But typically kids who are around secondhand smoke tend to like be more desensitized to it, and she didn't want that. So that's how she conveyed him to me. She portrayed him as this frightening thing with the biggest, fattest, ugliest, stinkiest cigar you could think of. And so People who can't see on camera, but the cigar was like this long. So I'm holding my hand out, like my finger. I'm holding from one finger on one hand to one finger on the other hand, like about 1.5 feet. And the cigar was like as fat as this microphone right here in front of my face. Like, so like if you put your hands up, like your pointer finger to pointer finger and your thumbs to thumbs, and you make like a circle with your two hands. That's basically how fat the cigar was, coming out of this 3-foot tall cryptid's mouth. And that was the Viking. As I'm telling this story, this is kind of all. I'm sorry if this is a boring one, but it's like I wanted to vent. There were a lot of different creature cryptids that I experienced in that apartment. And as I'm telling the story, I actually think I'll make another episode kind of describing a handful more. Truth be told, I, to this day, maintain that that apartment is not just haunted, it is possessed. Like, it's haunted, but not by a ghost. It's haunted by things. It is right next to the Canadian Pacific Railway, which is a railroad that was built on death and horror and blood. People were buried under the railway. I'm pretty sure they exhumed a lot of the bodies, but that kind of sorrow just sticks in the land forever. I am 8,029% sure that there is an actual entity that claims that space as its own to dwell in. And I would love to tell more stories about the entities I've experienced in that particular apartment. I'm really glad I don't live there anymore. I miss it some days because it's home, but I'm really glad I don't live there anymore. I'm especially glad I don't live there because the Viking was there. And oh my God, the amount of asthma I had as a child over the years was so bad. And when I got sick, it got worse. And it didn't help when he smoked. So, I mean, it's a fun little memory now. The man with emphysema that I turned into caricature. I think I'll put him up on Instagram. You know? Something like that. Ooh, I know what I'll do. And it's a perfect way to close out this episode, guys. Don't you know? Don't you know if you want to support the show and you really like what I do, you could like buy me a bunch of antibodies because you know I'm like always sick. So we've established I don't have a good immune system. You could buy me like $4 of antibodies if you want on like coffee.com/retrospect station if you want to like help. But let's do this. I'll do like a fun thing. How do I do this? Oh, I know how I'll do this. If you choose to donate this month, I will personally send you an image of my illustration of the Viking. $4. I will draw him. Like, and I'm not bad at drawing. I drew the cover art for this show. If you're looking at the cover art for Retrospect Station, like with the train and the clock and all of that, and you're wondering, like, can she draw? That's me. I drew that. Yes, I can draw. I will legitimately draw exactly how I saw the Viking in my head, including his apartment. All for the lovely price of a $4 donation. So whoever chooses, if you don't, that's fine. But whoever chooses to donate, based off this episode, message me. Message Retrospect Station on Instagram and say that you did, and I will happily send you a digital image of the Viking. It's yours. You can keep it. I will actually make it beautiful and detailed. But other than that, if you just like what you hear and you want to hear more, you can consider following the show on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get a podcast. I'm on Weezer now, okay? Weezer? Deezer. Oh, God. And you can also catch clips and stuff on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all at Retrospect Station. And if you want to find me, I'm currently posting poetry right now. The muse has entered my soul. At AstroAlex34 on Instagram and TikTok. The poetry is really on Instagram, but I should probably put it on TikTok too. Again, I'm not good at closing out this show, but I'll get better at it as we go along. But yeah, that's all for this one. What did we learn? I like to draw a lesson out of every single one of these, but I don't know what the heck to say we learned. We learned, don't smoke. If you smoke as often as this man did, if you smoke as though you are a campfire on Christmas Eve, hoping to burn Santa Claus as he comes down that chimney, if you smoke like you are trying to cook Thanksgiving dinner for an entire village, if you smoke like this, you will cough like him. That's your lesson. Put the vape down. Put the cigarette down. Wean yourself off of it. Just, you have one set of lungs. What the fuck are you doing? Don't become your own Viking. That's the lesson. Don't become your own Viking. All right. Bye. See you next week, Wednesday, with an actually proper length podcast. Smooches. Bye.
A special thanks to the Mississauga Library Makerspace and Hazel McCallion Library. Without their resources, this show would not be possible.